get it. I'm making my bed and it's straight to the digits. No cup of jokers, that shit is acidic. So I take a shot with the lemon and ginger. Look in the mirror like, yeah, I'm the nigga. Look in the mirror like, damn it, I'm fitted. Looking outside like the world is all mine. Look in the mirror like, nigga, go get it. I gotta get to the scene, oh. I gotta get to the bag now. I can't be chasing on these hoes. They getting they feeling and dragged down. That's why these niggas just crash out. Stuck in the cell and it's man down. Life getting gone in the flash now. Fucking it in, I'ma stand down.
I done seen these niggas crash out. They some baby boys, I'm the man now. They was questioning, make them fans now. I'm the best in my league and that's hands down. Understand now, got plans now, got big dreams. Now fuck that, got big schemes since 16s, hot 16s. I started broke, then I fixed things. I been king, I been him. My bitch bad, my whip clean. I been hot, that's benzene. You been not, that's cold stream. That's cold things, that's cold things. I'm motivated like Kobe. These motherfuckers don't know me. It's my time, check
I rise and I wake and I gotta go get it. I'm making my bed and it's straight to the digits. No cup of jokers, that shit is acidic. So I take a shot with the lemon and ginger. Look in the mirror like, yeah, I'm the nigga. Look in the mirror like, damn it, I'm fitted. Looking outside like the world is all mine. Look in the mirror like, nigga, go get it. I gotta get to the scene, oh. I gotta get to the bag now. I can't be chasing on these hoes. They getting they feeling and dragged down. That's why these niggas just crash out. Stuck in the cell and it's man down. Life getting gone in the flash now. Fucking it in, I'ma stand down.
Time that I could've died. Lucky Sonny Slim got 100 lives. Knock the rings out and I'ma fit my pinky with it. Fuck a Jada Pinkett, I get jiggy with it. You with it, then we can get it going. Talking bitch shit, and you just a semi cola head of the state, and I cannot be demoted. I put his head on the stake and make a hole in 2 out the meter. Can't say too many ways that I need her. It's a bread on the plate, she a eater. Need some bread on the plate for the feature. I'm a beast, little boy, I'm a creature. Ain't no money to make for me being tame. For I tell on myself I'm a plea insane. There's some folks in here with me, yo, keep it chain, and I swear. They keep talking all around my head, I hear it all day. I hope nobody don't tear the end alright. Cause I'ma send in the hell and then y'all wait. Gon' probably send me to hell, I need peace sign. For my shoulder, devils on east side. Now who's stronger, man, I'm getting deep fried. But I'm colder than a white polar until I'm over. Trying to stay woke in a high full of sleepers. I can leave earth anytime, no allegiance. Fuck all these hoes on that line too egregious. Had to be real one time for the region. I cannot get peace someday. Or just a little sleep someday. I know we gon' eat someday. And if the time divine, it won't be too late. Now it's a balance I've been trying to figure. In and out at times in my little feelings. My Valentine ain't want no dealings. And I can't blame you about that really. Cause ain't too much stable going on. Ain't nobody to say you on your own. I done took out a page from Rolling Stones. Advice might short the days and write the songs. Meanwhile, I'll engage in other things. Dazing off the other dreams. Another page, another ream. And I still can't explain just what I see. Maybe I went made to walk, the wings fell off. And now I'm trapped inside the thought. They birthed the flaw. Glad they brought the church to talk. Cause I need something to believe in. So make me believe. They keep talking all around my head, I hear it all day. I hope nobody don't tear the end alright. Cause I'ma send in the hell and then y'all wait. Gon' probably send me to hell, I need peace sign. For my shoulder, devils on east side. Now who's stronger, man, I'm getting deep fried. But I'm colder than a white polar until I'm over. Trying to stay. Time that I could've died. Lucky Sonny Slim got 100 lives. Knock the rings out and I'ma fit my pinky with it. Fuck a Jada Pinkett, I get jiggy with it. You with it, then we can get it.
side seeds do an ethnic cleansing.
There we go. All right. Put a 1 in chat if you can hear me now. Standing by. Yes. All right. This is what happens when you don't have anyone in the back chat with you to do a mic check. All right. Salute to everybody. Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Stand on Business podcast. One and only, yours truly, BossMann. Before we get things going, I want to take a look in the room to see who's around. All right. We got the one and only A-Team. Thank you, dear, for being here. Salute to you. All right. We have Milani. Good to see you, dear. All right. All right. Happy hump day to you. And we have Bubs the God. Good to see you there, sir. All right. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping on by. Edward Gilbert. Good to see you, sir. All right. Thanks for stopping on through. Appreciate you. And that's all that we got here thus far. So that's who we have in the sanctuary, somewhere and abroad. And appreciate it for those who stop by my own channel to pop over the likes and to subscribe for those of you who have. So I really, really from the bottom of my heart appreciate that as well. This is going to be quite an interesting conversation. But before we get there, I want to also ensure that everyone understands to support the network, support the show, Black Man Unfiltered. All right, Cash App him there. All right, and support the show, support the show, support the family, and show some love. All right. And also later on, I'll also ticker my own information down here as well if you feel so kind to support me as I grow my own platform and continue my own endeavors. Things have been kind of sort of moving slow as I sort of traverse this area and figure out what I want to do with my own space as well. But for the now, we are all putting in on this together as well. So support the family, support the network, and you know, show the love and spread the love. We really appreciate it. All right. So with that in mind, this is going to be, you know, at long last, the part 3. You know, for the most part, for the LGBTQ conundrum, or you may hear me colloquially refer to it as the Pride community or the Pride conundrum as well. So hope there isn't any offense there. I took a break from it for a while because I wanted to start a new series. And every so often, I will jump back and forth between these different series. And of course, we know now that the election is over with, I wanted to jump back to this because there is a lot of hubbub about what this inexorably means for the Pride community. What does it mean for the rights for, you know, men and women? What does it mean for everyone writ large who ultimately, you know, did not vote for, and yes, I'm going to call him the Cheeto in chief, but respectfully, the president-elect, Donald Trump. So what does it now mean? And it doesn't mean that I don't continuously talk about these issues and have these important conversations, but it also means that we need to also shift to some degree on how we have these conversations, which plays right in line with this series, because we got to start having more objective conversations about these matters, because to me, this election, if we don't pay attention, if we don't look at the result of the election and understand and take in and take stock of what it actually means, then we're going to fail at this again. Okay. And so tonight is going to be, I think, is going to be a hard conversation. So I'm going to say, hold your pitchforks. All right. And prepare, because I'm going to throw some jabs. I'm going to, you know, I might break a rib or two. All right. But I think it's necessary. All right. So understand, I'm coming from a place of objectivity here. Coming from a place of objectivity, I'm coming from a place of understanding, but also realizing that we as a society in general, cannot grow, and if we don't weed out what could potentially be problems, or for that matter, if we don't recognize what elements are problematic, especially if we're wanting to advance a particular cause. Before I do that, however, I did not get a chance to show this the other night. I think it's poignant, since I mentioned something about politics. I think it's poignant to show this also tonight as well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a slight deviation from what I normally do. And what I want to present is just a little bit of information just on the data of who voted for who, for the most part. Now, if this is not a clear sign, I'm going to go through these based off of the different statistics, okay? If this is not a wake-up call to some degree, that even if you were to look at it by age, if you were to look at men by race, if you were to look at suburban men and women, this is almost a 50-50 split. If you were to look at women, for instance, take one hard look at that. 53% of white women voted for Trump. 46% of white women voted for Kamala. Education, no college degree. 56% of them voted for Trump. College degree voted for 43%. I'm sorry, no college degree, excuse me, 43%. College educated, 56% voted for Kamala. 43% of college educated voted for Trump. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm showing this, and now I'm going to go and I'm going to end it with age. Because as we look, it seems like the younger you are more likely to vote. It seems more likely to vote for Kamala. And the older you are, it seems like you are more likely to vote for Trump, it seems. And what I'm going to show you guys tonight, and I'm going to do my best to speed past it as much as possible. What I'm going to show you tonight is it seems like the older you are, you seem to become a little bit more conservative, and the younger you are, you seem to be a bit more liberal to some degree. Okay. If I'm just looking at this, just letting the data speak to some degree. All right. But back to the ethnicity part. We still, as Black people, maintained this trajectory over to Kamala. That is no surprise for the most part. Okay. And this is where I kind of want to start tonight as we lead into the issue of the LGBTQ or pride conversation tonight. Now, where I left off last time on part 2 is I was talking about the inward kind of civil war within the pride community. And you can bet that even in this kind of sort of demonstration here, you can bet gender. You can bet that some of these people who voted for Trump, you can bet that some of these people were pride individuals. I'm just going to let that sit for a second. You can bet that some of these were pride individuals or LGBTQ community related individuals voting for Trump. Pause for effect. Now that's done. Where I left off last time was we were talking about the matters regarding particularly social matters regarding how LGBTQ people and what the plight is for the community, what is the most important aspects of what the community wants for society, one, and how what is wanted, what is desired, can fit in and assimilate into society while also not infringing or impinging on elements of general concourse. On the other side, what are considered heteronormative, while also those individuals who are not part of the pride community won't feel as if there is any infringement or violation, but while also to some degree accepting that pride people are here and also not infringing upon their rights as well. So essentially, the second point is, what is society's job? Is it society's job to pick one over the other? Or is it society's job to ensure that there is a general concourse and general, kind of sort of a mediation between the two, or between everyone's interaction and way of life? Okay, establishing a kind of consensus, okay, happy medium, okay, and establishing general order, okay? So even in the military, everyone has a different walk of life, and there's just a general understanding, starting with the 10 general orders, 10 general orders, and then everything spuriates from there, okay? The third point that I left off on part 2 was regarding the issue of minors. And I presented a stat about how many gender affirming surgeries and how much of gender affirming care was paid for by Medicare and Medicaid, and how many surgeries were being conducted on minors, and what type of gender affirming care was being conducted on minors. And that's where I last left off on that conversation. And that's kind of where I want to pick up tonight. Because if what we see here is a referendum on that saying, that's a bit too much for me. And let's just say everyone hung their hat on that. Because we can say everyone was like, oh, well, you know, GASs and GACs. When I say GAS, that's gender affirming surgeries. When I say GAC, that is gender affirming care. With GACs and GASs is a problem for prisoners and, you know, in you know, federal BOP, Bureau of Prisons, so on and so forth. The fact of the matter is, and I can pull up the policy if anyone needs to see it, that was happening technically since 2016. That president was Barack Obama, and that had been in effect since 2016 throughout Trump's presidency. If we need to see it again, someone can say, show me the policy, and I will pull up the policy on site. That was BOP's policy throughout Trump's presidency. Now, whether he was aware it was happening or not, that is neither here nor there. It was definitely happening, or at least it was their policy. And my stance on that, literally, and I swear my hand, I swear on my entire existence, my entire corporeal existence, I am, and I was against the mindset of GAS or GACs in BOP or Bureau of Prisons, until literally I'm walking in the house today. I do a format of verbal journaling in preparation for the show to kind of organize my thoughts. And it hit me today of a thought, and that was, what if there is a transsexual person, and there's a reason why I say transsexual and not transgender. So if you want, I can splice the difference, okay? There's a transsexual person that was incarcerated, and they need gender affirming care, not surgery, care, while they are in prison. Well, then, yes, they probably do need GACs related care while they are in prison, because a transsexual was indeed imprisoned. Someone's going to say, well, boss man, that is awfully left and radical of you. Consider this. Say a woman, a heteronormative, heterosexual, biological woman, received a breast enlargement and plastic surgery of some sort, and she was incarcerated years afterwards, and she had complications while she was incarcerated. Should that woman not receive plastic surgery related care while she's in prison? Put a 1 in the chat if you agree. Put a 2 in the chat if you disagree. While that's happening, let's use a heteronormative biological male example. Say that a man who was 5'4", 5'5", and he received a femur extension to make him 5'9", 5'10". He did something wrong, he gets incarcerated. Now, I wouldn't say that any of these heteronormative examples are gender affirming. I wouldn't go that far. But they are affirming in some sort of way, because these individuals chose to do something to their bodies because they didn't like something about themselves. The man didn't like that he was short. The woman didn't like the fact that she had small breasts. Let's just say, because I'm equating the two. So, Pride community, I'm coming for you next. If they had complications while they were in prison, should they not receive certain related care in order to ensure that they are back to being healthy? Because I personally view gender affirming care in the same realm, not because I think that it should be normalized. No, I view it in the same way that it's a preference that you choose to transition. I don't argue in the realm of I was born in the wrong body. I don't argue that. That's not my stance. My stance is that you choose to transition. That is your choice. So with that in mind, all things being equaled, should this person, if they receive some sort of femur infection or a mammary infection, should they not receive the care and should they just die? All things being equaled. Not seeing anything in the chat. So that either means that no one wants to answer the question or no one cares or no one sees the correlation. Now, what I disagree with is the mindset that someone should receive any GASs in BOPs or Bureau of Prisons. That I disagree with. And I don't think that was ever really touted. I think that was targeted and suggested that that was what was going on, or that was what was suggested was going to be a thing. But if I'm being forced to take a stance, the answer is no. What I read in the policy, I didn't see anything about GASs. All I saw was GACs. And so, with that in mind, should the care not be provided if it meant that the duty of the Federal Bureau of Prisons is to keep a person alive because they are in their custody while they are incarcerated? Because a person who has schizophrenia needs their medications. A person who has diabetes needs their medications, and it's all things included. Now, otherwise, what that then means is that a person who is then incarcerated with pre-existing conditions, that means that a certain person who has existing conditions, if they were to be incarcerated, it would inexorably and ostensibly would mean that they then would be potentially entering into a death sentence. Potentially. That would mean any woman, man, trans woman, or trans man. Just saying. Now, also where I left off on was this absurdity of the fact that Medicare and Medicaid is paying for GACs and GASs. I don't know in what world why that's ever being paid for by taxpayer dollars. Because if taxpayer dollars, if Medicare and Medicaid can't pay for a woman's breast enlargement, plastic surgery, if Medicare and Medicaid is not going to pay for anybody else's affirmation of whatever it is that they think that they need to make themselves feel better, then so too should it apply on the other end. And that sounds very harsh, but I'm going to explain to you why that is. Okay? I know it sounds harsh, but I promise you, there's a reason for it. Here we go. This right here is the diagnosis for gender dysphoria. And this is from the not the DSM-5, but DSM-5 Tango Romeo. Okay? So before anyone comes to me and say, "Oh, you're reading the old one that said disorder," I'm reading the dysphoria one, not the DSM-5 that said disorder. Because I understand that the reason why they changed it from a disorder to dysphoria was to basically take away the stigma of it. But then also there's another reason, and that is for insurance purposes as well. And that's not from me. That is also from another. That is also from a activist source. Okay. Now I'm going to show you the verbiage, and please look at the verbiage. Okay. Take feelings out of it. Take perspective out of it, and please look at the verbiage. Okay, here we go. A marked incongruence between one's experienced, expressed gender and primary and or secondary sex characteristics. Okay, so a marked incongruence. Okay, we're doing good so far. Here we go. A strong desire to be rid of one's primary and or secondary sex characteristics because of a marked incongruence with one's experienced, expressed gender, to prevent the development of the anticipated secondary sex characteristics. Let me translate. To prevent the pending puberty. And if I'm wrong, someone please correct me. Basically, to prevent what is going to happen because of what is your biological clock, what is naturally biologically set for you because of what is biologically set for you, because of what you are biologically. To avoid phenotypically what is slated for you biologically. Okay? And the key words are strong desire. Not a medical condition, folks. We're not talking about someone who was born with a particular issue, born with anything that was, born with a DSD, for instance. I think I said that right? DSD? Hang on. Research. Go back. I want to make sure I say stuff right. Yes. All right. Not someone who's born with a DSD, which DSDs, difference disorder or sexual development. Disorders of sexual development. We're not talking about someone with a DSD or a genetic disorder or someone who has a different arrangement with their chromosomes. We're not talking about that. So for anyone who wants to come in and say that here's an exception to the rule, we're not talking about that. We're talking about someone who's phenotypically normative, someone who's genotypically normative, saying that they have a strong desire to be rid of one's primary and or secondary sexual characteristics. A strong desire for the primary and secondary sex characteristics of the other gender. A strong desire to be of the other gender. So I just want to be of the other gender. And understand that before we have this argument, for the sake of argument, yes, gender itself is a social construct. Okay, it is a call and response to what is physically obvious. Okay. However, because there are only male and female sexes, to me, yes, there are man and woman as far as genders, because it's an answer to the fact that there is male and female. Now, where you start getting into a complication is when someone is born with abnormalities, which isn't a bad thing, but when you're born with something that is abnormative, such as something that is likened to androgynous type features, like multiple, either it shows itself phenotypically, where it's multiple genitalia, or it shows itself genotypically, where you have XXY or YXY or YYX chromosomes instead of just the normal pair. Okay. Or it shows itself physiologically, but not phenotypically, meaning that on the outside, you look like a woman, but on the inside, you're missing parts such as ovaries or a fallopian tube or something of the nature that completes the normative woman. Okay. These are abnormalities that I am omitting because you came, I'm going to use a term here, but you came out the factory for the most part like this. What I am talking about here specifically for this conversation are completely 100% normative on this pyramid. Okay? Phenotypically, physiologically, and genotypically normal people saying that they have a strong desire to be of the other gender. A strong conviction. Oh, we changed the word here. Now, Melania, I like what you said here. Access to medical care is a human right. Oh, sorry. I missed other comments too. They had something prior to going to prison and needed medical attention. After they got there, they should receive medical attention. Okay, I agree. What else did I see? Oh, here we go. They should have affirming care, especially if it's imperative to the healing process. Maintaining. Okay, yes, I could agree with that. Okay, so we did get some answers. My apologies. I was in the middle of talking and did not look back. Apologies there. All right, I'm going to save this one. Okay. So, hey, salute there, Mandrell. All right. So, but yes, I could agree with that. Access to medical care is a human right, regardless. I could agree with that, 100%. Now, this is where we start getting into a little bit of a problem here. Now, mind you, strong conviction, strong desire, these are not medically necessary. Now, again, I'm not taking the stance that no one should get these things. If you want to transition, you have the right to. What I argue, and the reason why society is so bifurcated and polarized in such a way, is because when you look at, when you look at who is paying for it, when you're looking at, the stats and saying, let's see, how many people are, how many kids are getting this type of surgeries, and again, yes, who's paying for it, and yes, if the taxpayers are involved in it, now you're starting to ask the question. So then right here, I'm going to stop right here for a moment and ask the question: what would make society tone down its rancor a little bit? Would it be putting all the onus and payment away from the taxpayers? Because what would the other side have to argue if their funds, if their money isn't involved in it? What would they have to argue if minors are not included in this? Just something, just something to think about. Okay? And just for a moment, I'm going to take a moment really quick, and I'm going to show you guys the stats. I've been looking for it all night, and I finally found the actual figure that I've been looking for to show you guys the actual stats. So here we go. All right, so this is from, I do believe this is from 2022 or 23. I'm going to have to go back and look and see where these stats are, but it doesn't really matter when these stats are because the stats are alarming. Okay, now that is not my solution. That's being a little pessimistic there, Bubs. Now, between 12 and 18, how many people between the ages 12 and 18, how many people are receiving breast and chest augmentation? 3,215 between the ages of 12 and 18. Genital operations between the ages of 12 and 18, 405. Now, I understand it could just be one person who's, I don't have the breakdown of anyone who's under the age of 18. But the fact that it is between 12 and 18 and that's included in this, I think that if I had a plight for the pride community, I would say this is what I think America is looking at and saying, this is problematic. Now, one could argue on the conservative side or on the pride side, one could say, well, conservatives, the mindset is that y'all want you guys argue that the concept of the authority over children is with the parent. So if the parents are the ones that's making the decision, then who are you to get in the way of a parent giving the consent for this to happen? And that would be a fair overarching argument. The complication here is that we get in the way of talking about general concourse and then kind of mores or morals here, in a sense. And then everyone looks to government to say what should happen here, for the most part. And there is the rub. If parents are the ones that are making the decisions between the ages 12 and let's say 17 versus 18, well, I'd say 18 as well, because the 18-year-olds usually don't have health care of their own. They usually going off their parents' insurance, and they're having genital surgeries. The parents are the ones that are permitting this. So if the parents are the ones who have the say, and the parents are the ones that are actually pushing it, but then on the conservative side, parents are saying, parents have all the rights and parents have the final say, and then the liberals say, well, good, I have the final say, so what's the problem? I don't know how to square that circle. Because what I'm looking at right now, I look at it and say, minors should not have any of these surgeries. I'm going to say it again. Minors should not be having these surgeries. And I would argue that I'm an advocate for people to have rights, to live how they live, love who they love, marry who they want to marry. And I understand that that is contradicting to the primary foundation of this here network. I understand that. But I differ on this point. I also differ with Medicare and Medicaid paying for any of this. 12,117, 2,581. That's, to me, anything over zero is too much, because to me, again, transitioning is a choice. And the moment that we cannot come to terms, this is where I say, Pride community, we've got to be honest. You have got to be honest. We got to be honest, forthright, and you've got to be genuine. I don't know if it's fear, because I know that things look like hate from the other side. And I don't understand why. I do understand why that there's so much vitriol and hate. I understand it. Well, when I say I understand it, I understand the fact that it exists. But similar to the Black community, white community, the Pride community should also take moments and fish out what is absurd in order to show contrition, if that makes any sense. I appreciate it. Personally, would like to see LGBT stand up for straight people. Wish they would realize their culture is influential. Respectfully ask LGBT not to demonize traditional folks for being careful. Okay. I don't. When you say being careful how? Explain. I think I understand your point, but when you say being careful how? I think you mean being careful with. I think you mean being careful with youth as it relates to the main point of the conversation I'm having at the very moment. But just clarify for me, Dora. No kid should be getting plastic surgery, puberty blockers, unless it's a life or death situation, and if if they are allowed to do it, the taxpayers should not be responsible for paying for it. Okay. I mean, again, life and death type situation. So there is a condition that is, okay, I'm going to botch this, where puberty happens too early. Okay. And it can be harmful to a minor's body. I forget the term, but it's going to happen in the video I'm going to play. And essentially it happens like to a 6-year-old. It could be a male or female. And then essentially the puberty starts to happen at way too early, and it's harmful to the individual. I can understand that on a diagnosed basis. Again, those are exceptions. What I disagree with. Oh, there we go. I get to your question. What I disagree with, and you're going to see some of this in the videos I'm going to play. What I disagree with is the purposeful and intentional adjustment. But then again, conservatives, we got to also think, if the argument is parents have ultimate rights over the agency of the children, then square the circle of how do we then say that a LGBTQ mother or father doesn't have the right to approve said treatment that maybe a doctor then comes in and says that they are diagnosed with gender dysphoria. Oops, hang on. I meant to share. Gender dysphoria according to this. And the only reason why I put forth the answer, or put forth the question, is only to challenge the thought, not to challenge the logic. Just playing devil's advocate, shooting down the middle. Although I do agree that to me, it's abhorrent. And there are, and to the Pride community, there are people within the Pride community who do agree with my point here. And I'm going to show it to you here momentarily. All right, so here's a question. Let's say your answer is the solution, which I can agree. Do you personally believe that the American people are going to hit the brakes on trans people? Explain hit the brakes on trans people. Medicare is for all right, BMU. Good day to you, sir. At some point, parents have rights. I'm sorry. At some point, parents have to have rights. I can't read tonight. At some points, parents' rights have to end and child endangerment / abuse begins. Okay. And so those things, those things have to be defined. Agreed. And queer people have stood up for all people historically. Okay, agreed. But so those instances where queer people have stood up for others, that is separate, I believe, separate from the conversation here at hand. If I'm wrong, tell me. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yep. All right. So now, I asked this question the other day, and it's a very good question, and discussed this with I bounced this thought off with my wife as well. And here's a thought. How is it that we can diagnose a child with gender dysmorphia? Jesus. Okay, here we go. Gender dysphoria to the point where it can warrant gender affirming care, which, by the way, I want to quantify that gender affirming care could equal puberty blockers that can affect the body to the point where it's irreversible, okay? And irrevocable, okay? Now, and gender affirming surgeries, all right? So we can diagnose a child or a minor with said diagnoses, right? But tell me something. Why is it as a society we cannot diagnose a child or a minor as a psychopath? Take a second to read that. And trust me, in the DSM-5 TR, it still states that It's longstanding in America that a child cannot be diagnosed as a psychopath. So we can assert that mentally speaking, a child cannot be considered a psychopath because essentially, I'm going to translate, essentially, it's too mentally difficult. But we can diagnose a child with gender dysphoria to the point where we're willing to take actions, and drastic actions, might I add. This part here, I don't understand. So where am I going with this? I'm pointing out these things because I think Pride community, I think this is some of the reasons why there was such a large referendum. I think that this is the reason I think this is some of the reasons why there's such an issue with the Pride community, is because in some instances it champions. Let me not do that. Components of the Pride community champions what I just showed and what I've been showing since it started. And similar to the Black community, the nonsense that we champion, it's up to us to rein in our people, right? And I would argue that if there are things within the Pride community or sectors within the Pride community that says absurd things, that it's okay to go in and say, nope, not that. We don't claim that. Because I think it dilutes the overall cause. If that makes any sense. I think it dilutes the overall cause. If you want the cause to go forward, then the things that make sense, champion that. I know there are going to be some people who think the overall movement doesn't make sense anyway. And to that, I would say, I mean, there are some white people who think that even Black people shouldn't have been freed at all. There's always going to be people who are going to be naysayers. There's always going to be detractors. There's always going to be people who are going to be against the overall movement. And so what? But the things that don't make sense, the things that affect general concourse, like, for instance, trans women wanting themselves to be aligned like women. I have more respect for a trans woman who recognizes that they are a trans woman and not a woman. I have more respect for that than someone who says, no, I am a woman and I'm equivalent to a woman. Well, no, you're not. Sorry. We've got to be honest all the way around. Pride community, you've got to be honest and you have to be genuine, because otherwise, if it looks crazy, sounds crazy to just the general public, and if you're not honest that being being a transsexual is a choice, if you're not honest about that, saying that you were born in the wrong body or saying these other things to dilute, because here's how I see it. And please understand my plight. It's hard for people to accept who you are if you can't truly accept that you weren't what you were and became who you wanted to be. If you can't even be honest enough to acknowledge that you were dysphoric about who you were, what you were, then how can someone grasp and understand the concept of your journey from start to finish? Transgendered individuals who have not quite yet made the transition or finished the transition. I asked somebody on this network. I'm not going to say exactly who now because I'm just not. But she was a woman. And I asked the question. I said, if a transsexual woman or a transgendered woman, because there's a difference, came into the locker room and changed clothes in front of you, who would you feel more comfortable with, the transgendered woman or the transsexual woman? She said the transsexual woman. And I asked why. She said because the transsexual woman, she said that because the transsexual woman would be more like her. Now I'm going to ask a question to everyone and be honest. Does that sound like someone who is, does it sound like the issue is bigoted, or does it sound like an issue of being comfortable? Does it sound like more of an issue of assimilation? Oh, got the question here. So to make things better, trans people should pay for their own surgeries. Children should not receive surgeries until they're adults. I can agree with that. Solving that would make Americans happy. I think ultimately, maybe. And I'll tell you why. When it comes to like abortions, for instance, let's use abortions, for example. I think the conservative side would be a little bit less pissed about abortions if taxpayer dollars never went to, the taxpayer dollars were never subsidized or used as subsidies to those institutions at all. Let's see. Children should not receive surgeries until they're adults. I can agree with that. So solving that would make Americans happy. Edward Gilbert said exactly. I argue this, and I don't know if this is fair or not, but I'm gonna attempt. If a transsexual woman is looked at just for the sake of equality, but let's look at less equality and more equitable or equity. then a breast augmentation or not mastectomy, but yeah, a breast augmentation or any plastic surgery to further affirm the preferred gender, in the same way that a woman who isn't as feminine as maybe the next woman next to her, and she wants to become more feminine because maybe her two parents produced a female who has more masculine features. Let's just say. I think we all know some women out here who aren't as feminine looking. Doesn't mean they aren't a woman, but there are some women who are more daintier looking than other women. Okay? And let's say they want to augment that. That's affirming to some degree. To make things equitable, both parties would have to pay for the things that they want in order to to achieve the level of affirmation that they're looking for. I think the issue might be on the pride side is that it's looked at as a disorder or a dysphoria to a medical condition in order to, because looked at it that way in order to allow for health insurance companies to pay for it. And even still, some health insurance companies won't pay for it still. So a good number of them won't. Because think about it, you have people who are gender non-conforming. Well, the difference between gender, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not right about everything. I'm not that kind of person. Gender non-conforming and gender dysphoric. The only difference is that one just doesn't have or exude any. One doesn't exude any distress or mental breakdowns or mental complications or any distress from the disconnect between what they believe they are, think they are, to what they are corporeally or physically. Okay. If I am incorrect about that, please correct me. Okay. See, I really want to believe that would make Americans happy, but what happens when the trans woman pays for a transition, reaches the level of affirmation, and people still got issues with it? Then those are, there we go. Here we go. I'm about to address that. Those are the same type of people that Black people still look at relative to white people, and they're still racist. Because here's the thing. To the pride community, I'm going to say this, and I mean this from deep within here. Okay. I think what everyone seems to want is for everyone to accept. And here's the thing, not everybody is going to accept. Not all white people like Black people, not all men like women, not all women like men. Hell, I just saw yesterday where Black women don't like Black women don't like Black men because the 20% of Black men didn't vote for Kamala. Damn the 83%. I mean the 73%, or the 80-something percent. Damn the rest of us, right? Like, wait, what? Wait, what did he say? Okay, it's the agenda that is making his thing. They can produce a placenta. Okay. I have a solution for that, BMU. That would actually be a trans man. Gotcha. There we go. All right. Whew. All right. Safe. All right. So yeah, that's kind of that's kind of my thought there. Essentially. Hey, welcome back there, Braxton. That's kind of my thought there. Is looking at it from an equitable mindset and saying, okay, how are these two things similar? Because in order to move forward in a largely, at least, and I'm interested in seeing the votes. I'm interested in seeing how many Democrats voted Republican. Okay, because what that shows is a lot of people moving to the center, a little bit more conservative, and what you're about to see here in the video here shortly. I'm not gonna be able to play the whole thing because it's already at the time of night that it is, but people are coming to be more conservative, right? So in order to advance what you're still wanting in a largely conservative place, how do you do that if you are unable to articulate what it is that you're wanting and be reasonable? And the thought process is not everyone's going to like it. Not everyone's going to like all components. You got to be happy with something. Just like Black people got to be happy with something. Women got to be happy with something. Black men got to be happy with something. Hell, men got to be happy with something. And at the end of the day, if the only thing that that pride community gets is the ability to love who you love, marry who you want to marry, and for the trans community is to transition at an age where it is an appropriate age to do so. As far as being bigoted and hate crimes and so on and so forth, those things are written into law currently. Now, where we start getting to complications when we start getting to schools. And you're going to hear somebody in the video say that when it comes to sex education, anything that is non-biological, and you're going to be surprised by who says it, anything that is non-biological should be, she said that any non-biological should be left out of schools in general. But then she said that sex education, for the most part, should just be schools anyway, because the teachers should be focused on, the teachers should just be focused on, just curriculum and the duties and responsibilities of these type of matters here should be remanded. That information and that duty should be remanded back to the parents. Just to keep all things equal. But if you are going to introduce, sex education to the equation, I think that here's a fair mindset here. I don't know what part you agreed to here or anybody else agrees, but here's a thought. When it comes to sex, what can economically affect a person if they were to not know about a certain aspect of sex. Question number one. And then two, when it comes to STIs, for instance, I think the most important thing about sex is not how to have sex, but the results of it. We're talking about education relative to what is in schools. The results of it and the implications of it relative to the risks, dangers, so on and so forth like that. Because I remember what I got, and it was a whole auditorium, and they just went through the different pictures of STIs for the most part. Like, and I left that auditorium like, I ain't doing this shit. Nope. Nope. No. That didn't last very long, but neither here nor there. The point is that I was informed. I was informed of the dangers, and I knew what I needed to do to prevent said dangers. Okay. Now, as far as the how, I didn't rely on my school on the how to do it. So, to each his own. So, I think you'll be surprised to hear who made that solution. But if the issue is, because you got to remember, on both sides here, conservatives and liberals here, you got to remember that there are LGBTQIA plus parents who have children. So they may feel that there is a sleight of hand here if they are not getting representation in schools as well. Right? So how do you, if I'm sitting in the middle and I'm society and I'm looking at how to strike a balance, the easiest balance to me is to, hey, parents, teach your own children about this shit. Because we're having a hard enough time teaching them 1, 2, 3, ABC, and what the hell happened in history. Okay. We're just going to leave the rest of that shit to y'all. Yo, facts. Yo, okay. All right. That's a different story. I'm not going to go there. All right. So I'm going to start a video here. So if you guys agree to that, to that, I mean, before I go into the video, just understand that my mindset here is how to move forward, the referendum on transgenderism, and what's next. My thought process is how to move forward. All right. Middle ground. All right. Getting there. My thought process is, if the Pride community wants its agenda to still push forward in a largely conservative area or environment, one, you gotta be honest about some shit and calling some shit what it is. And I'm being kind of harsh, but come on, call some shit what it is. All right. And bad actors, here we go,
is a trans person.
Jeffrey Marsh. You blurred my face. As if my face is the kind of face that should ever be blurred, first of all.
This happens to be a trans person who makes her living coming after other trans people, including myself.
You're not trans. I'll say it again. And do I make a living bashing trans people, or do I make a living calling out bad behavior, including yours? Calling out abusive behavior, predatory behavior, including yours? I know that's, the worst thing that could happen to you is someone just accurately clocking what the fuck you're doing, but hi, I see it. I see it. A lot of people see it. And the attempt to shame what I do for a living, not quite hitting, considering I would so much rather do that than what you do for a living which is
talk to the kids.
You know what? If your lane is so much more honorable, let me step into it really quick. I want to talk to the kids as well. Stay away from this man.
Sorry, mute monster got me. There we go. So yeah, call it out. I appreciate it, but everyone's got to be honest. And hey, 100% agree. Everyone's got to be honest, and I agree with that, 100%. And yes, this individual here, in the individual, not Blair, but the one below, that person's content, oftentimes says I'm talking to the kids, all the time, for the most part, and purposely. And again, please understand, I'm not saying everybody does this. Certain individuals, they will purposely target or reach out to kids or to minors. That is object behavior. Okay. So things like that, for instance, or someone's marching down the street saying, "We're coming for your kid." Like, come on. Things like that, for instance, with the understanding that even on our end, we have deplorable people that do abhorrent and detestable and repugnant things. And we should call out those individuals. And if we don't, we are no better. We can't sit here and say that we want the pride community, or we want to detest and deplore and excoriate the pride community, but at the same time we have ecclesiastical people who are part of the religious edifices, for the most part, in the religious edifices, but part of the religious consortiums. There we go. That's what I meant to say. Okay, doing abhorrent crap. Call it out. So that way there isn't any tainting of the water, in a sense, when it comes to who people are, whenever an agenda is being pushed forward for rights within the society. I think I said that correct. Understand? Wait, hold on. That deserves this. I'm sorry.
You got to be able to pume.
All right. Little moment of levity there. All right. So, given where we are, I actually didn't even expect for for myself to be able to opine this long. I actually didn't think I had this much to say. Actually, I was going to let the videos speak for themselves. But here we are. So, let's go.
And nothing was touching it until we used he, him pronouns.
I don't even know where to start here. Sex is not assigned at birth, it's established at conception. We have to get to biology here.
Today we're bringing a new version of Middle Ground. We'll be exploring the topic, should minors be allowed to medically transition? We'll be introducing an undecided group, and they'll be listening to a discussion between liberals and conservatives, and the undecided group will pick a side after each prompt. Transitioning has become a social media trend.
Absolutely agree. I mean, it is just skyrocketing, the amount of children that you see falling into this, and we need to stop it.
Absolutely not. People said the same thing about people coming out being lesbian, gay, or bisexual as it got more normalized, as people became more accepting of like their children and things like that.
Now, this is an interesting comment. Trans people need to start gatekeeping their community. I've heard this before from someone within the trans community. And what I heard it in the context that I heard it from a transsexual saying that transgendered individuals are not trans. And it is the group that are transgendered that are blurring the lines between heteronormative individuals, non-trans and transsexual. Because essentially the thought process is that if you are committed to transitioning, then the only thing then you are literally not tarrying with the ideas of it. You're not like tapping the waters of the trans lifestyle itself, and it's not something you can put on and take off. You are that, as opposed to, I'm going to get in trouble here, cross-dressing for the most part. Now, that is coming from people within the community. That's why in part 2, I had made mention of the internal civil war, because there are questions of whether or not within the pride community, should the T be removed, because originally the LGB portion, and maybe even the Q as well, because the Q does include sexual orientation, but as of late, it has moved towards including identity and sexual orientation as well. But but the LGB portion was just sexual orientation. In fact, before all of the letters came into be, it just used to be queer. So the thought process is only people who are actually transsexuals are actually trans, and anyone else are just either in the process or they are cosplaying in a sense. And the thought process is, from their mindset, is that they are diluting what it means to actually be transsexuals or to be part of a trans community in general. So I actually heard that point before from someone within the community. I'd be curious to see other people's thoughts on that. I don't care what people do with their own bodies, but don't try to keep forcing your beliefs onto others, especially kids. That's where I draw the line at. I could agree. Holistically, funny thing, I actually asked my oldest son where he learned about LGBTQ. Hang on one second. Oh, hey, that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Religion isn't something that is actually pushed on to other people and is actually thrown around quite a lot. Didn't consider that, actually. It's actually a fair point. I think ideologies are oftentimes thrown around, I think, and it's oftentimes done subliminally to a point where it almost feels like when someone does mention it, it's because it's so subliminal that when someone does mention it, it's almost like you feel as though you're being attacked in that moment, almost, because everything is so subliminal. To include religion, to include media propaganda, to include political propaganda, it's all over the place all the time. Okay, so, but I could agree. If the mindset is that if one ideation is not to be promulgated and purported and pushed forward, then it should be equal across the board too. Don't push one religion, push one mindset or way of life, then don't push the other one. Keep it within the walls of your home or the walls of your own person or within your own community. I could understand that. Correct. I could agree with that. But Edward, I asked my oldest son, I said, I was curious. I said, hey, where'd you learn about, well, do you know what LGBTQ IA plus is? And he said to me, now mind you, really quick, my oldest son, he's autistic. Okay. So I have to ask things in certain ways. So bear with me. So I said, hey, what do you know what it is? And he said pride. And I said, yes. Okay, pride. We're good. Okay, cool. You know what it is. And I asked him, I said, so where did you learn it from? And he said, from the internet. Okay. So did you, I said, so what made you want to look at what happened on the internet? He said, I just looked it up one day. I said, okay, so what made you look it up? I said, did you learn it from school? Did you learn it from, the friends at school? Did you learn it from teachers at school? Like, where did you first hear or see it? He said he was watching something on YouTube YouTube, social media. And then it came up. And so he looked it up. So then I went into very specific questions. And I said, okay, so let me ask a question. In school, has any teacher, adult, counselor, something, anybody other than a student come up to you and ask you or teach you or, introduce to you, talk to you about LGBTQIA plus or Pride Matters at all? He said, no. I said, let me rephrase. What about sex education? He said, no. Okay. Do you see LGBTQIA plus or gay or no Pride members or Pride people at school that are children or students? He said, yes. I said, okay. Do you see like girls kissing or do you see guys kissing? He says girls. Okay. So let me rephrase the question. You don't know, no teachers, no adults, nobody, no adult has ever come to you at school and talked to you about LGBTQIA plus or Pride Matters? He said no. So I realize I gave you an anecdotal situation, but if I were to just take that for an instance, okay, and I have another teenager that just moved out, and they went to the same school system, so I have two anecdotal situations. The internet is part of the main influence, mostly. So my mindset is that these kids are going to actually get a hold of this almost whether you like it or not. So the thought process is, what are you doing or what are we doing as parents to talk to them? Because after I questioned him, I then sat down with him and just talked to him about it all. And he seemed genuinely interested. And then I asked him, what was he interested in? He said, girls. I said, okay. And we pushed forward. We've already had part 1 of our talk. We're going to have part 2 of our talk. So what are we doing as parents to ensure that, whatever our ideologies are, that we are doing our part as parents? Not saying any one person isn't doing their job. I'm not suggesting that. I'm not getting into anyone's homes, not saying anyone's not doing their job. That's not what I'm saying. I'm asking a general, rhetorical question. And so, Edward, I point this out because, yes, I think that there are individuals who do force things onto people in general, even adults. But I think in large part, it's less about the individual, and I think it's more about what's just in the media and what's in social media and what's just out there that you honestly cannot control because it's just there. I hope that makes sense. But I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just putting the ending part a little bit into perspective. Because I just literally had this conversation as I was prepping for the show. I had this conversation with my oldest son 2 days ago. I cannot homeschool. I cannot homeschool. I thought about it, and I'm pretty sure I am mentally astute enough, rather, to be able to do so, but I cannot. Let's see, Milani. I did not learn until I went to school. And the girls were kissing and touching, etc. On each other. They tried to get me to do it too. I told them that's not my thing. You'd be surprised. Okay, it's not even the adults. I wouldn't say half the time. I would say most of the time. But we got some people out here now. But it's these kids. Hi, Peter. I have no idea who Peter is, but hi, Peter. I think I might know who Peter is. Parents are the first teachers. That's exactly what should be happening in every house. Exactly. All right, appreciate it. Appreciate the support there. I try to go and have impromptu conversations. I will see this kid just walking randomly, minding his own business, and I'm that parent that just son, and then prompt the question, and it'd be the most randomest question that pierces the veil of a certain particular thing. Because that's when they're not expecting it, which means they're not guarded. So it'd be any question. Like, hey, you drank alcohol yet? Hey, that's how I do it. They're expressed to more actual reality because of the internet. I think you've been exposed. Can't hide ish anymore. It's time to walk in the actual light and educate your children about life because they're going to experience it. And that's the approach I took with our oldest daughter, the oldest son. Same kind of thing. And we didn't hide anything, and we told them exactly the truth. We didn't sugarcoat shit. When they ask a question, are you sure you want this answer? Cool. This is what you're gonna get. All right. So my thing is, if you old enough to ask the question, you're old enough to get the answer. See? And sorry, there was a lag there. I bet it came from someone that was your age, slightly your age, in the same grade that you were in. I bet. Yeah, I could agree with that. All right.
Like everybody wants to be gay. Now social media is around, people my age, like we see other trans people, and being aware that that's something that's being accepted by other people makes you more comfortable with yourself and like comfortable with like internalizing that it's okay to be trans in public.
I think you're falling prey to the survivorship bias, which is just sort of, you're overlooking all of the cases of people who either weren't able to come out because they weren't comfortable or safe to do so, or they either died due to suicide or other mental health reasons. But over time, if you look at left-handedness, that skyrocketed in a similar rate as people became more accepting to it.
I reject that. But
let me ask you something. If that's the case, if more people are transitioning simply because it's more acceptable, then how can your side also say that there's a trans genocide happening?
Bear in mind, this lady right here, this is your transsexual woman right here. So trans woman, sorry. Be more correct. Trans woman right here. And the person in the blue in the middle, that is your trans man. I think I got it right. But on the other side, so I'll point it out whenever it goes around. Okay, so trans woman, trans man on the other side. I think there's two trans men. I do believe, but I could be wrong. Let's proceed.
Those are completely opposite. No, I know you didn't, but
nope. Okay, so only one trans man. I'm not sure what she. Okay, I'm going to botch this. I'm not sure what she identifies as. I'm thinking. I can't remember. I watched this earlier, but now I cannot remember. So I'm going to say, just to be safe, I'm going to say she. But I could be very, very wrong. So not intentional.
But liberals say that all the time. They're saying that there's a transgenocide for some reason. So I'm just curious as to how you would square that circle.
Can we define what the transgenocide, I guess, narrative is as raised by her?
I would like her to answer that because she's the one that brought it up.
Yeah, because so we hear people saying simply because legislation is being passed across the country that is banning minors from being able to transition, that automatically means that those children would commit suicide. And that is simply an abusive statement in of itself.
Statistically, a lot of minors who aren't able to transition who would like to do end up.
Why don't we have this? Why don't we have this? Why don't we have?
So you see, they would like to, but again, because they would like to, children would like to eat a candy all day long. Doesn't mean that we as parents or we as adults should oblige to what is desired by children, especially something that is this drastic, is my point.
The same suicide rates in the past if that was the case.
How could we have
like and hold on, I'm sorry, I gotta say this. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that hating or mistreating children because they think or feel this way is right either. Let me make that very, very clear. Okay, make that very, very clear. Ostracizing and excommunicating children because they may think a certain way, feel a certain way, or whatever the case may be, I don't think that is correct either. Obviously, if there is something that is not connecting, meaning I think I'm a woman, but I am a man. There's something not connecting there. Okay, that's a sign for let's talk about this. What is going on? Let's figure out what the problem is, because obviously materially and corporeally and coming to reality, there is a problem. And there's nothing wrong with saying that there is an issue, because the greater majority of society can have a mental and physical congruence. Okay. So, Bubs, I have a theory. But 1 second. I'm going to start this. I have a theory. But that not creating a situation of harm or hate or disdain, that to me, I think is wrong. But what I don't think is also the answer either is, hey, you don't think that you are what you physically are, then I'm going to feed into what is obviously a delusion, which again, I hate when people say that because you think that what I'm saying is delusion, you must be a bigot. No, my sweater is purple. Don't tell me that it's red because you think it's red, unless you're literally colorblind. But just because you're colorblind does not mean that I'm wrong about the fact that my sweater is purple. Because 15 other people can look at this shirt and tell me on a social construct level that my shirt is purple, which means that you are the odd one out, which means that you are the one that on a social construct level might need an adjustment. So let's explore, figure out what the issue is. More than likely, and now Bubs, here's my theory. All right. Yes, and that can happen without surging hormones. I appreciate that compromise there. That's good. Your first part of the statement. Wait, here we go. Understandable. I'm talking about the way of allowing whatever going to naturally happen to happen. Who knows? It might be a fate. Yes. 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 I 100% agree. All right. Whew. Hey, howdy. So it's no secret that me personally, I didn't grow up with male influences. I think when I first came onto the scene, and even as a visitor or guest before BMU gave me a segment, I was very open and very honest about the fact that I did not grow up with I didn't grow up with male influences. Even when I was younger and staying with family, my great side of the family, that lady had like 10 or 15 or 12 kids, and those kids had kids, and they failed at having boys. So there were just girls abound. Okay. And I was there in the mix. So, father wasn't present. A lot of women around, so on and so forth, yada yada. But then my own genetics, creates what you see here as well. So mannerisms can't control, and then what you see here can't control. So you have a lot of things that both influences and biology that you really cannot control, right? Now, there are some things I can control, but that's just my own damn decisions. However, a lot of things you cannot control. What did you say? I bet you couldn't break. But you, no, I couldn't. No, I couldn't. And well, I would say like every room they had like a different room, and different room was doing different things. And every room at one point in time was like they were doing hair, and they were doing hair in different ways all the time. It's craziness. At any rate, and there was only one room for the boys, and I wasn't allowed in there because I was too young. And we were always like wrestling and stuff, like WWE, I think it was the WWF at the point in time. Stone Cold Steve Austin was the thing back then, and when we were with the boys, all we were doing was like throat slamming and throat choking each other, and wrestling, whatever the case may be. So that's all we did when we were with the boys. Wrestling, fighting and kicking each other, whatever the case may be. But now over times was I allowed to be around the dudes because they were always older. So at any rate, hey, how you doing? So at any rate, my theory is that a lot of times society likes to pressure people when first of all, your genetics don't permit you to have what is phenotypically appropriate or qualifying for what is deemed masculine. Okay? So what happens is that, so like for instance, my own father didn't grow facial hair until he was like 30, what do you say, like 30, 35? And my mother, she still looks like she's in her early 40s, maybe late 30s in the face. So, and my father, I think he's in his 50s, and he doesn't have a wrinkle on his face. So you put those two together, you get a smooth faced person. Me. So what ends up happening is genetics play a role in the fact that the only thing I'm mad at my father about is that he didn't pass on the tall gene. So, however, whatever. Anyway, so with that in mind, my theory is that certain people are pressured because they don't necessarily have certain genetic traits that make them assimilate into certain roles phenotypically. Women get this pressure too. Because if they aren't as busty, if they're not as curvy, then they don't get certain attention. Oh, appreciate it. Thank you. I do not, you'd be surprised. I do not actually have a routine for my skin. I actually don't. It's just soap and water and literally alcohol. That's it. Soap and water and alcohol. That's it. I don't do shit else. Anywho, so what ends up happening is if a woman, for instance, if a girl grows up, she becomes a woman and she's not as curvy or whatever case may be, yada, 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 or if she's not as what is dubbed to be the most feminine, what ends up happening is, especially the younger they become, because if you remember, our girls were not, as fastly developed as they are now. So what ends up happening is they're overly pressured to become something more than what they should be at a younger age. Boys are overly pressured to become something more than what they should be because younger boys now are hell. I went to the damn high school, Jack, and they're freaking giants now. Hell, I went to the high school and they waved me in like I was still like I was an attendant. It's freaking sad. But here's the thing. My theory is, Bubs, back to you, sir. The theory is that because of those pressures, people tend to fall into those pressures and then they don't find themselves. Oh, hang on. All that's happening naturally is you find your way. All this happening to you naturally and you found your way. Queer people want to have the same experience. That's really my argument. And that's my point, is that what ends up happening is people don't find their way. People don't necessarily, become comfortable in the skin that they're in. And so you have there was a person who said, hang on, reading here, says, there was a psychologist that said that trans people are most likely to be diagnosed with either autism or they struggle with identity issues. And generally, it is struggling men who are feminine male children, predominantly. Or if you were to flip it and reverse it, it'll be masculine female children. And a lot of that is genetics. Some people are just born with what society says should be culturally acceptable for what should be all of the checked boxes for a man and what's all the checked boxes for a woman. And if that person doesn't feel accepted and they aren't okay with who they are, then what do they then do? Well, a feminine male will then go in and do what? Transition. I look like this anyway. A masculine looking woman, I look like this anyway. May as well add the hair. You see? It's all about, at the root source of it all is, I don't look like the other person. My theory, I don't look like what the rest of them look like. And I should be because I'm supposed to be that. Why don't I have that? That's my theory. And if we could just grow to accept, if we could just grow to accept who we are, what we are, irrespective to what people may say, what people may do, how people may treat you, maybe we'll have less of this. If you want to augment the body, okay. Men go and enlarge your femurs, or lengthen them rather. Correct. There's always going to be somebody who's going to have a problem with you. That's a crass way, but yes. Just okay. Okay. You said it. I'm gonna make a joke. All right. So a moment of levity. Just make sure the thighs match. Okay. Just make sure. Please make sure the thighs match. All right. Goddamn. Okay. Individuals are much cooler than clones. I haven't seen it. Yes. Hey, JT. Yeah. Yep. Just make sure the thighs match, goddamn. All right. Just do that shit. All right. But that's my thought. Right? That's my theory as to why we see so much of this is because of lack of personal acceptance. Okay. I had to understand it and learn that myself. Now, of course, it wasn't until I got to the East Coast back in 2019 that I even heard what trans was. What year did I say? 2019. Little booty. Okay. All right. Yes, little booties do matter. All right. It wasn't until I got to the East Coast that I even heard of what the hell I'm struggling to say the word because I'm wanting to say what the person told me. Okay. At any rate, didn't even know what transgendered people were. I was in the Midwest, minding my own business, not knowing what these things were. Things as in terms, not people. Okay, understand what I'm saying? And then I come to the East Coast and world was completely opened to include learning what subscriptions were. Yeah. Didn't know what those were. That's another subject for another day. In fact, I might talk about that on Battle of Sexes. We'll see. All right. A little bit more on this and then we can call it.
known that the people who were committing suicide were transgender if they didn't feel safe to come out.
When you look at like members of each generation that identify as LGBTQ or in that community, it's like less than 2%. And then for some reason, as soon as we get to Generation Z, it's 20%. Now, some of you may argue, okay, this is just because it's more open, it's more accepting now, everyone, it's okay to be that. But then in the same beat, you guys will say that if you don't accept them, they're more likely to commit suicide or something. But it kind of sounds like a double-edged sword.
So that didn't sound double-edged to me. It sounded pretty accurate. Like if you're not accepting of somebody, they're more likely to be self-hating. Like if you're telling somebody that they're not allowed to do something, they shouldn't do something, they're not fitting into their own body, especially experiencing dysphoria in itself, it's a mental battle in general. Like,
so to clarify your point, I think you're saying that acceptance is what's leading to. Is that right?
It's a mixture between self-acceptance, outer acceptance. It's a conversation between nature and nurture. Like.
See, here's the problem with that. There's two longitudinal studies alone that I could cite. In Sweden, from 1973 to 2003, they looked at a large number of subjects who had before transition and after transition, and they had worse comorbidities, they had worse mental health issues. Sweden is a very tolerant, liberal, progressive country. A study this year, published in Denmark, 2023, 42-year longitudinal study, and what they found is that the mental health issues did not decline, they actually were augmented. It was worse for individuals who thought that by transitioning they would solve their mental health issues. It actually got worse. It doesn't help, it doesn't solve these issues. It shows it's a contagion. That is the key word.
Let's pause there then. What are your guys' thoughts on, let's say, that's a pretty popular figure that's been mentioned when it comes to a social media influencer that's risen to fame because of that?
She's just doing what she's doing. I don't think that she's doing anything wrong.
Okay, he.
Do you think that has...
My pronouns are she, her.
That's transphobic.
Do you think that has inspired trans kids?
I think she's also inspired out.
Okay. I have not addressed this yet. And I've been pensive on addressing pronouns. But I'm going to address it. Whew. All right. Here we go. I'm going to do it. Words have meaning, folks. I will meet in the middle on the she, her as it relates to an actual transsexual. I will meet in the middle on that. Okay? I will meet there. Notice I didn't say transgendered people. If I'm going to meet you, me personally, if I'm going to meet you in the middle on the transsexual portion, then you have to meet me in the middle on one, understanding the following: that assimilation relative to your transition is key, because the society has been used to looking at phenotypical attributes and addressing accordingly. And every person who uses a pronoun based off of what they phenotypically see is not a bigot. That's one. Two, they, them pronouns, I cannot meet in the middle on that. And here's why. Words have meaning. They refer to more than one person, not more than one gender, not more than one sex. It's more than one literal person. Let me make this example. A person with multiple personality disorder, you've confirmed that they have multiple personalities. And they have 3 or 4 of them, or 5. Now, when that one steps into the main forefront, they don't say we. That person doesn't say we. They each have names, and they refer to themselves as I, and they refer to the other ones as them. Oh, I'm Tim. Johnny's asleep right now. He'll come out when I let him out. That's how even people with multiple split personalities talk and refer to themselves, because they understand, as a committee, they understand that they are still one corporeal entity. They're just split cognitively. The premise of calling someone they, them, because you cannot agree with who or what you are, is essentially feeding into a delusion. It's feeding into the fact that you are not aware of who you are. And I'm like Rafiki all day long. You don't know who you are. Even if you are uncertain as to who you are for sure not more than one physical, corporeal entity walking through this social construct. So I cannot go with they, them pronouns. Referring to one person, only because logically it doesn't make sense. Liturgically, it does not make sense. Literarily, it does not make sense. Socially, it does not make sense. And if I were to feed into your delusion, it's not helping you at all to feed into it. I would much rather prefer to tell me what you want to be called that day, either he or she. I prefer that than they. The English language is hard enough. Try teaching a child there, there, and there. So I was even okay with them, they, and there with Z's, because at the very least, that was different than breaking what was already established. I am not for people not wanting to at least try. That when you see an assimilated transsexual person, and the key word is assimilated, because it's very difficult to break what is customary. Because you got to think, transsexual people are a small, minute part of the population within a minority of a population. I have yet to meet a transsexual person. And I have met hundreds of people across 48 states. I have been in all 48 states, besides, obviously, we're omitting Alaska, and Hawaii. I've even been to Canada, and I've been to Mexico. And I've yet to meet a transsexual person. So hear me when I say that it's very difficult. I can imagine it'd be very difficult to adjust to what is a customary norm. So it is not something to be accosted by. But you're asking society to break what is taught and customary and normal. 2 times over, pride community. And you've got to understand that that is, first of all, one part doesn't make sense on the they, them part. Because you're not more than one person. For decades, for hundreds of years, in the thousands of years in the Gregorian language, they has been referred to as more than one individual or more than one physical corporeal thing. Them cats, them dogs, they are a pain. See? And because now, in less than 10 years, you want someone to refer to you as they or them only because you cannot agree with who you are, even though society has already determined who you are. And even if you cannot determine or agree with who you are because your parents named you, you had no choice in that. Biology decided what you was going to be. That was in your father's scrotum. I know women love to think that they decide the gender. You don't. Men do. Women are the carriers. And men put life into a woman. Sorry, ladies. And for the men who seem to think she won't give me a son. Bro, that's your fault. Talk to your scrotum. Shit. You're the reason why you don't have a son, not her. Shit. You know how many times I heard men say, "Oh, she didn't give me a son." Hell, King Henry's wife was beheaded because she didn't give him a son. Damn it. The ignorance of it is a pound. At any rate, they, them, I cannot work with. Sorry. And I hope that doesn't hurt any feelings. But honesty is honesty. That isn't going to work. Pick one. But you are not more than one person. I think the only one that can actually afford to call themselves they and them is if they are schizophrenic, if they have multiple personalities, and every so often one checks in and one checks out, and then I could say, okay, you know what, they all have a seat at the table. I can agree with that. Okay, y'all can have a seat. I can agree with that. Okay, y'all are crazy. I can work with that shit. I can deal with that. But because you don't agree with what is reality. I'm sorry. In a conservative area, if we even as Black people, if we want certain rights, we have got to start being honest.
allies to see the human being behind the pronouns and the makeup and the dress, and to see that there's someone who's going through a story, and that watching her go through that story enabled us to see the humanity behind her.
He is degrading women. You see a great disregard. I mean, look at the product that he was supposed to be promoting. It has fallen into.
Her pronouns are she,
And with all due respect,
to me
it
like the
isn't
people who are
phobic to
following
speak
them are
the
y'all,
truth.
not the youth.
Okay, that's not a phobia.
Let's
Telling
stop
the
here.
truth is not a phobia.
Let's stop here
It's not a
and let's
phobia.
go over to the undecided group. All right, so undecided group, you guys are kind of like the comment section. Which side did you resonate with most, liberals or conservatives? So why did you resonate most with the liberal group?
Trends pass. Trends end. So calling it a trend is saying that these people's identities are just going to go away, and I don't think that's fair. Why do you think that it's not transphobic to misgender?
Because the concept of misgendering is false. There are two sexes. There's male and female. Well, it's in the chromosomes. It goes beyond superficial or secondary characteristics. He is a male. He was born a male. He will remain a male. It doesn't matter how many chemicals he puts into his body or how many body parts are cut off. And I'll say this again. Telling the truth is not a mental illness.
Do you have a response to that?
Yeah, I think that there is a difference between sex and gender, and I know you're going to disagree with me, but transgender is its own thing, and she can be. See, no, don't try to blame that on me. You are using the wrong pronouns for this woman, and you're trying to influence something.
Do you have a specific question that you'd like to ask the liberal group?
I would just like to hear more from them because I feel like it was very one-sided.
Thank you. Okay. So you sat more on the conservative side. Do you want to explain why you decided to come here?
Yeah, so I think, it is just factual that there are more people transitioning or at least coming out, not even just as transgender, but just, within the LGBTQ community as a whole. And so I do see, I think for me, it does become a little bit grayer when you start to say, okay, is that because people are being like influenced to transition, or is it because it's more accepting and people are feeling more open and safe about coming out? And I think, when you're in, a friend group or when you, associate with certain people, I think you are likelier to maybe, explore your gender a little bit more or, look more into those avenues. And I think that can influence someone to transition if, maybe beforehand that wouldn't have been a consideration.
Do you have a specific question that you'd like to ask either side?
Yeah, I guess I would like to ask, the liberal side, and I can't necessarily trace it back to a specific time when this happened, but I do think we have seen recently, a rise in people identifying with genders that aren't necessarily within a binary. Would you say that's a rise? How would you, I guess, account for that? I think, as I said earlier, that is just accounted by survivorship bias. People previously were not comfortable enough with coming out, and that's where that difference comes from. And eventually, that skyrocketing rate will even out. I definitely do think that that is kind of a factor of it. That people are just coming out more and are feeling more accepted. And I absolutely do believe that that is a good that social media has done. But I do also kind of push back on the idea that it's just completely that. Like when you look at figures who rise to prominence, like for example Dylan Mulvaney, these are people with huge platforms that are reaching to younger people who are at stages in their lives where they are exploring ideas of gender and gender expression and identity. And so I guess personally I would push back a little bit against the idea that it's just people who, had it been more accepting in the past, they would have come out. I do think there is, a rise. I feel like the numbers just don't really account for it necessarily being just that group of people. I think there are people, especially youth, who are identifying more kind of on the gender spectrum or as transgender that maybe wouldn't have before.
So you're the only undecided. Can you clarify why you still remain undecided?
Yeah, I think the reason I remained undecided was because although I appreciate the presentations of both sides and I see both their points, I was still a little bit unclear as far as what's like each opinion was on each side. So I would just be curious to ask the liberal side, is there any evidence that you guys could present that would suggest that transitioning lowers the rate of suicide?
I would say on one hand, there is data that suggests that trans minors who are not able to medically transition when they do want to, their suicidality attempt rate is around 40%, and that drops to below 10% when they are able to transition. Moreover, if I wasn't able to transition and I didn't have any support in my life, I would probably kill myself.
Now that's disconcerting, because the thought process is, if I don't do this one thing, rock with me for a second. You're having a hard time accepting yourself, right? And so then you want to do something, and so you struggle to do it, you do it, and then just to find out that there's a world that has a problem accepting you for what you did, when it would have been a lot easier just to accept and love yourself for who and what you are or were. Which might have been easier. Might have been. Now, I cannot say for certain that everyone, that would have been the correct path for everybody. But I would I would argue and purport that maybe a lot of people will be happier to include heteronormative people, because little Kim, for crying out loud. People who went to the extremes to augment themselves, would they not be happier by simply just accepting themselves? Even if they were to do a little bit here and there, a little bit, so on and so forth, but just accepting themselves versus completely augmenting and adjusting themselves. So I'm going to pick up where I left off here on this particular clip here, because there's a lot more information and a lot more back and forth that I think is interesting. But one thing I did want to point out is there's literally 3 people on this side, 3 people on this side, 2 undecided, and 2 decided on the in the back, and 1 person in the middle undecided. And that's pretty much, it's pretty much how it went for the most part. But then there was many times where there was more people on the conservative side than there were on the liberal side, and we're going to get to that next time on part 4. As well as I talk about different solutions. Here I wanted to lay out tonight. I wanted to kind of lay out what were the terms of the referendum, how I saw what perceived to be the components of the referendum. And I think the components of the referendum was what everyone was purporting, what everyone was trying to I guess, go for, shoot for, fight for, argue for, essentially. And I think America basically said no. Even if someone was going to enact the, Alien Enemy Act of, what was that? What was the act? Hang on, because I'm going to find it, because I mentioned it. I'm going to say it now. Uh, 50 USC Chapter 3, subsection 21, the Alien Enemies Act. Even if that is the future of certain individuals, whatever the case. Even if that is to be the case. They basically said, hell to no. And the question is, why? Now, I'm not saying that this is the only reason why America said no to the Democrats, of course. That's not what I'm saying. But as it relates to the pride community itself, this isn't the first time. This isn't the only instance that America is basically pushing back and retorting, okay, and retarding. That's not calling people stupid. Retard is to basically reflect, okay, retard against the pride community and the efforts. And the question is why? And I don't think anyone is really wanting to have the conversation as to why. And okay, maybe in a way that isn't sharp. Maybe I can try. Kids seem to be the really, really hot topic, and rightfully so, because, hey, I have children myself. And I would prefer that if they're being taught something, I would prefer to know what that is. And you're going to see in the clip I'm going to show in part 4, you're going to see that even the trans woman mentioned the idea or the notion of consent. Anything past what is not operational. Jeez. Anything that's past organic should be consent based. That way there isn't something, the feeling of feeling, or the what I would consider, there isn't a situation of feeling ostracized from society, and maybe feeling as though there isn't a situation of the world basically leaving you out and and expunging you, okay, and exculpating you from the situation, or you know leaving you out and denigrating you from from society, but also keeping in mind that some things may just be considered extracurricular. All right, what's the question here? Would you do a religious conundrum series? Yo, I thought about that, and I would say stay tuned. I have a couple of series in mind. Smiles. So, bear that in mind. I have thought about a couple of things to do, actually. So I appreciate everyone for stopping by. Stand by really quick. I need to get something as requested. Here we go. All right. And so what I want to basically do is take this time to try to essentially, I wouldn't say bridge a gap, but to kind of explain something from a different perspective. Okay. And kind of point out what the problems are, if at all possible. All right. And it seems like I was able to point out some things without hurting any feelings. Okay. All right. I'm really trying here. It's very interesting standing here in the middle and holding both sides and saying, okay, all right, where can we work together, and where can we see, some sort of compromise? Because we have our government basically that we have to basically realize that we are in some form of fashion enslaved to and intrinsically connected to at the neck, people. So with that in mind, the Pride community, stay tuned for part 4, or not just Pride community, but for everybody. Okay. But I understand that that members of the Pride community typically come out for these particular episodes for sure. Just to hear someone who's not part of the community speak on these things, and I really do try my best to be as educated as possible and speak on these things in a way that isn't incendiary. And it can be frustrating at times, all right, because I do have my own thoughts, but while at the same time also keeping in mind that people are people, all right, and we're all humans within this citizenry, within this country. And at the end of the day, what do we all want? If you come to the table and we are trying to argue some sort of consensus, let's not start with what we disagree with. Let's start with where we agree, and then work our way from there. You will oftentimes find that we agree a lot more than where we disagree. I think we can all agree that children should not, in large part, should not have surgeries relative to altering their biological or physiological genders at a certain age. I think that makes some sense, especially once you see how detrimental it could be. And even if the data suggests that it's not as bad as we think it is, the question I would then ask the parents who ascribe to this is, why risk it? So with that in mind, I appreciate everyone for coming out. Hey, make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And with that, start with what we agree and start now. And when ish hits the fan for all of us. Hey, correct. Not right. And not when ish hit the fan for all of us. I appreciate that. Yes. For some reason, I'm struggling to read today. I have no idea what the hell is going on. This is not like me, but I'm going to figure it out today. It's like Monday number 3. All right. And then there's Friday. All right. So everyone, I appreciate everyone for coming out. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Support the channel. All right. And comment on the channel after it posts. All right. To keep the algorithm going. Hey, if you have any comments or any suggestions as to what you would like for me to potentially comment on or talk about, like Edward here, he mentioned something about the Navy SEAL from Dr. Phil. I did not mean for that to rhyme. Navy SEAL from Dr. Phil. There we go. I'll go take a look at it. Hey, I go back and I read the comments, and I will definitely engage in conversation with you to keep the algorithm going. So I appreciate everyone for commenting. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Appreciate the back and forth and the commentary. Appreciate the decent and cogent interaction and concourse. Okay, appreciate it. This is a very, very, very sensitive topic, especially coming from someone who's not part of the community. So I appreciate it. Thanks for everyone for coming through. Hey, like I always tell everybody, and I say it all the time, and I'm going to say it again, think a little deeper, all right? Think objectively, and whatever you come up with, stay on that shit, all right? Good night, everybody.
All right, guys, another one in the books. Another great episode on the Black Man Unfiltered Network. Listen, we're doing the thing over here. So, guys, do me a favor. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the share button. Also, if you want to donate to the channel, which helps the channel, hit your boy Cash App. It's scrolling right here, right there, at the bottom of the screen. And support the channel. But we're happy that you're here, and we look forward to seeing you on every episode. So hit the notification button so you know when we go live. Thank you again, guys, for watching. We out.